friends, welcome to Dear Miss Mary. This video almost did not happen, I gotta tell you. So I am praying that that was for a reason and that the enemy does not want me to say that. I want to talk to you today a little bit about my testimony, my story, my journey of really understanding and learning my identity and my self-worth and fighting the anxiety and the depression through it. So here we go. When I was a young girl, I struggled a lot with this duality deep in my heart. I came from a very big Catholic Colombian family who lived loud and loved even louder. I was smothered in affection, edified daily from the people who believed in me almost to a fault. But then again, I guess that's what a good family does, right? They don't see your flaws, they see strengths, they see potential. God love them. Even my dad, who I didn't always get along with, would brag to his friends about how his little girl was so smart and so sassy and all my little accomplishments as a young entrepreneur at 8 years old. It just didn't make sense though, my feelings. I felt so many things so deeply, and I wasn't sure if anyone else in the world felt the same. Over time, when the world wanted to play and joke and live superficially, my heart cried out for deeper conversations, stronger connections, and passionate relationships. Was there anyone out there who was willing to truly live and love and feel things, even if it meant walking through and talking through hard things? I felt so alone. I felt like an outcast, and I pushed relationships away. I couldn't quite figure out why I had allowed myself to feel so unwanted or unaccepted and insecure. There was just no reason in the world for me to be so intimidated by others, even Christians. So I started to work harder. I started to reach higher and walk right past my giants and pay them no mind. I began to strive to be somebody. As a young 20-something, I got deep into the club scene. I not only bartended, but I promoted my own nights. I knew everyone, I got in everywhere, and I knew all the cool kids, all the important kids, all the famous kids in all the hot cities. I ended up managing one of the hottest nightclubs in Orlando when it all came crashing down. About 10 years later, my faith as a child started messing with me. I knew that there was more to life than this, more to my purpose than this. In my 30s, I surrendered my life to Christ, even my body to Christ. I was single and celibate for 8 years before I met my husband, and yes, we did wait. During that time, I was flooded with ideas on how to change the world. I ended up starting my own Christian teen magazine. I traveled for 6 years around the country with the Women of Faith Conference, and I served in a leadership role at my church. I knew everyone. I knew all the cool kids, all the important kids, all the famous kids in ministry. It seemed like nothing had changed. I was still striving for identity and self-worth. Identity and self-worth. I learned so much about this in ministry. How could I have had such a huge blind spot in my own life? You see, soon after I got married, I got pregnant. Our marriage began to collapse, and my life was no longer my own to strive for success to compensate for that. I couldn't get the validation and the attention that I needed, that I had gotten all my life. The next 5 years was very painful and excruciating process of learning how to let go, how to surrender, how to live an invisible life, and how to survive on only who God says that I am. It felt so silly at first. It felt diluted. And then I got desperate. Some days I felt strong enough to get through the day, read my Bible, and talk to my mentors, my friends. Other days it took everything I had to get out of bed, peel myself off my tear-stained pillow, and feed my children. Those were the days that I would collapse on my floor and allow the worship music to just purge all of my anger and my sadness. I would yell, I would cry, I would question and accuse God until I was empty. And then somehow I would feel strong again to rest my mind and go to sleep and try again the next day. My life was nothing like I had imagined. I struggled with my own ability to hear God's direction and even struggled in my faith. I asked all the questions. How could I have? How could he have? How could you have let me do this? Why didn't you save me? Why aren't you fixing this? I did everything right. I did everything for you. But nothing came, no answers. Just the same stripping away and hanging onto him for dear life every single day for 5 years. Matthew 3:13-17 was a story when Jesus appeared to John at the Jordan River. He wanted John to baptize him, but John was like, "What are you talking about? I'm the one who needs to be baptized by you." But Jesus insisted. He said, "You have to do it. God's work is putting things right through all the centuries, and everything is coming together right now, so you have to baptize me." So John did it. And in that moment, when Jesus came up out of the water, the skies opened up and he saw God's Spirit, and the word says it descended on him like a dove. And a voice came with the Spirit, and he said, "This is my Son, in whom I'm well pleased, in whom I've chosen, in whom I delight in," depending on where you read it. That's identity and self-worth. You see, before Jesus could start walking out his purpose and his calling, he needed to be rooted in his identity and his self-worth. Because immediately after, he would be tested by the devil himself. Tested by the devil himself. Isn't that amazing? How many of us have prayed for God to give us a ministry, to give us a purpose, to give us a clear vision of what he wants us to do? How many of us have said, "God, I want a testimony. I want the influence. I want an opportunity." But yet, we question when we go through battles. Isn't it crazy to think that Jesus had to go through the worst torture and the worst rejection by the very people that he healed and restored and loved and walked with? But God knew this was going to happen to his own Son. So what did he do? We have to look at Jesus' life to see what we need to do in order to survive that kind of rejection and pain. In order to go through what Jesus went through, God had to start his life, his ministry, by giving him identity and self-worth and making sure that he was rooted in that first and foremost, because that was the only way he was going to be able to withstand the battle, to withstand the pressures, the refining fires. And that, friends, is what happens to us. We have our own cross to carry. We have our own story to live out. We have our own test before our testimony. We have our own pain before our purpose. But are we willing to go through it and still trust him? Are we willing to question him and to question our faith and to go through those dark times? To be in hiding and to have everything that we knew we were stripped away so that we didn't hold on to that for our identity and our self-worth? Are we willing? Because the Word of God says that in John 10:10 that the enemy is here to steal, kill, and destroy, but that God is here to bring life and life abundant. The Word says that in this life, in this world, we will have trials, but to take heart because he has overcome. That we are victorious in Christ Jesus, that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. The Word tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made by his very own hands in our mother's womb. He had a purpose for us before we were even born. We are chosen exactly how we are. We know that when he starts something in your life, when there is a journey, when there is a plan and a purpose, that he has a perfect time, that he has a perfect strategy, and that he will not let you go and give it up until that is completed, until the purpose has been fulfilled, because all of it is for his glory. So I just pray today that if you feel like you just are lost, that you don't have an identity, that you don't have a self-worth, that you don't know how amazing and purposeful you are, how specifically made you are. All the things that you think are flaws, all the things that the world says you are. The world, to me, told me that I was too talkative. You know what God says? God says that I am a communicator, looking to deliver a message from God. He has put me on this earth to say something to his people. The world says that I'm dramatic. And you know what God says? God says that I am passionate for truth and justice, that I love people so deeply and so much that I want to understand and help restore them by fighting even when they don't want to fight. The world says that I'm sensitive and emotional, and God says that I have discernment, that I have the gift of being able to read people and know a little bit about what they need, what they're going through, that I have the ability to sense things that they don't want to share, and to pray for them, and to help them come out of that place of hiding into the light, so that God himself can love and restore them. The truth will always set us free, and I feel that I am the generator, the what do they call it when when they want to find bones and they have to dig out bones. I feel like I am the person trying to dig out the skeletons, the bones, and bring the breath of life to them. So friends, I just pray that you begin to look deep into your heart and write down all those things that the world says you are. And then look into his word, look into the word. Read his promises and read who he says you are, what your identity is, because anxiety and depression is running rampant in our culture, in our society, in our generations. And that is the enemy. Your journey is to take all the things that God says you are and figure out just how to deliver it, just how to be that person, embracing every single thing that you think is a mistake. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to Dear Miss Mary again. I pray that this encourages you and that it just brings you a little bit of healing to your heart, a little bit of freedom to this time of anxiety and depression, figuring out exactly who you are. I love you guys.